across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, I want to talk to you about child maintenance and the child maintenance service, because we're going to be talking about that at about 10:30. And looking into some of the stories, some of the horror stories that have happened with parents trying to pay the right money, not pay any money, parents trying to get the right money, and some of the oddities of the system. So I'd love to hear from you if you've been through the child maintenance service, and it's usually for people who can't agree on a child maintenance programme. So they'll go to this service and they try to sort it out for them. So what did you do when it came to your divorce and your child maintenance? How did you manage that money? Was it fair? Was it fair? Did it feel fair that the parent bringing up the child and then the parent who was paying because they weren't bringing up the child? That seems to be the system. But both wages are not taken into account. So you can have the parent bringing up the children or living with the children largely on a much bigger salary, but the parent who isn't with the children still has to pay what the CMS says that they have to pay. So it's all very complicated, and of course there's divorces going on at the same time. People are getting angry, people are getting emotional, and children often, whenever I've done there's similar stories to this in the past, usually about the family courts actually, which I think are incredibly biased towards women. I think they are not very helpful towards the fathers, and that's just my opinion of that situation, having looked into it many, many times. And I wonder if it's the same with the CMS, that the dads are vilified, if you like, and treated as the bad guy when they're just trying to do the right thing. And maybe the children are used as well as a weapon, so you can't see the children if you don't pay the money, that kind of thing. So I'd love to hear from you as to what it was like for you when you went through your divorce and sorting out what you were going to do with the children. So I'd like to hear good stories and bad stories, of course. So it would be lovely to hear from you. Do give me a call and let me know how you made those arrangements. Are you still fighting? Are you still trying to get the right money? Are you still trying to pay the right money? Are you being attacked by the CMS? Are you being attacked by the other parent and being told you can't see the children? So that's what I'd like to talk about. Like I said, I'm going to be interviewing somebody about this at about 10:30. So do give me a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number you're going to need. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. So I look forward to hearing from you about that at midnight. Also at midnight, we're going to be heading off to the US to catch up on US news. You know, when I plan this week on week, I never think, oh, what if there's nothing to talk about from America? Because there always is, and we've got so much to get through at midnight as well. We'll be talking to Niall Stange in Washington about that. Ed Wiseman joins us to go through the papers at 11 o'clock. Mal Fletcher, our fabulous futurist, is going to be here to talk to us about AI going rogue. We're also going to be talking, like I said, about child maintenance as well. So all of that is to come. A very, very busy show tonight. But first, Russia has warned the UK it will face severe consequences, accusing Britain of acting as a co-perpetrator in recent deep strikes on its territory. A military source confirmed that British-made drones targeted Russian military and industrial sites, including oil refineries, reportedly inflicting over £35 billion worth of damage. Well, in response to Moscow's furious rhetoric, the UK Ministry of Defence reaffirmed that that Britain stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine against Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion. Meanwhile, wider geopolitical tensions continue to escalate, with separate intelligence revealing Russia is quietly constructing secret jet-powered drone launch pads perilously close to NATO's borders, and they do have drones that could hit Warsaw. There's also been rumours that Putin is thinking, at least, of launching an attack on Poland to see what NATO's response might be. So all of that is going on at the moment. And Dr. Stephen Hall joins us now, who's an author and lecturer in Russian and post-Soviet politics at the University of Bath. Good to talk to you again, Stephen.
Good to talk to you, Petrie.
Thank you for joining me. Right,
No,
there's so much to go through on this, but let's start with those severe consequences that Russia is threatening the UK with at the moment. I mean, there are Russian hawks who are saying that they could hit us with a bomb. They've got high-speed drones that we wouldn't be able to shoot down. So there is that sort of language going on in Russian media. But what are we really looking at here in terms of these consequences?
Well, it's always hard to say. I mean, no one ever talks about the consequences that they would definitely do. There would always be the threat that there will be consequences. And Russia, in terms of its media, has always been talking about how it could flood the UK with a Poseidon-type missile on the sea, how it only takes 2.5 minutes, if that, for a nuclear weapon to hit London from Moscow, and the usual sorts of permutations that Dmitry Medvedev has been talking about since 2022 about nuclear war and these sorts of processes. So you always threaten, and Putin, even in just before the war began, I think it was 24th of February or 22nd February, said that if the West gets involved, you will experience things you've never imagined possible. So this has been going on for quite a while. And whether Britain has actually been involved, whether the drones are even British, it could still be a narrative for the Russian domestic audience. But I'd be inclined to believe that the Kremlin at the moment is issuing threats in the hope that Britain will dissipate from supporting Ukraine. That is ultimately the Kremlin's aim.
Why single Britain out as much as they do? I mean, which they have done, as you said, all the way through, even though you've got countries like Germany supplying weapons, you've got other European countries supplying, if not weapons, then support in other ways. Why the UK?
Well, there's always the merry-go-round in Russian narratives. For a while, Emmanuel Macron was the bête noire, especially when he started talking about sending French troops to Ukraine. He became the the public enemy number one. Britain and Russia have always had a long history, from the Great Game, Rudyard Kipling, the war over Afghanistan, and various other palpitations in Central Asia. Russia and Britain have generally seen each other as the other and needing to stand against one another. They haven't necessarily been allies historically. Yes, the Second World War, to an extent, the First World War, were differences, let's say, and it fits into the idea that the Kremlin puts forward of the Anglo-Saxons out to destroy Russia. I mean, only in Russia do Anglo-Saxons still exist, and they are apparently important, with America not really being, with Donald Trump, Putin trying to portray Donald Trump as a peace negotiator and trying to say that I want peace, and perhaps Donald Trump will cave in and actually provide me with what I want. Therefore, the Americans are no longer the enemy. So it's always good to talk back to the Europeans. Occasionally it changes to the French, less so the Germans. But Britain has always been the control behind the scenes, as it were, controlling all the puppets. The Ukrainians don't have agency. It's Britain's MI6. It kind of makes you proud to be British that the Russians still believe that MI6 is an important organisation. But the Anglo-Saxons are always behind the problems that Russia experiences.
I mean, let's look as well, though, at an increasingly I mean, increasingly frustrated Vladimir Putin, and he must be feeling a little bit more cornered now that the war is coming to him. The people can see it. Russian people are being arrested off the streets. I know that's not unusual, but they're being arrested particularly and disappeared because of their anti-war stance. It's starting a groundswell of opinion at home, even though it might be quietly spoken, that this war isn't going the way that they expected it to, now that it's visiting them on their doorsteps. So Putin must be becoming increasingly frustrated, and I imagine that a frustrated Putin is not a good Putin to have.
Well, I mean, I would have thought that the Russian population would have seen that the war hadn't gone quite as well after 2 weeks, after Putin claimed he could take Kiev in 2 weeks, and we're still here. Certainly, since, yes, there have been problems with getting petrol into petrol stations. There have certainly been hits on oil refineries, on Wildberries, which is the Russian version of Amazon, and of course with certain ideas that the war hasn't gone quite the way that Putin wanted.
And they're seeing bodies come home, of course.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, they are and they aren't to an extent, but that's still relatively hidden. But certainly, I can imagine that Putin is relatively frustrated. But at the same time, he is a person, his autocrat, and he does receive information that others want him to receive. He is notorious for not taking bad news particularly well. So why would you, as someone lower down the food chain, as it were, provide him with that bad information? So we don't quite know what information he's having. Certainly, I can imagine he's very frustrated, but to an extent, he possibly doesn't know quite who to blame in regards to this. And that is, I would say, possibly quite worrying, in that we may see the hawks in the Kremlin get the final word. They seem to be increasingly close to Putin, and that may lead to Russia showing its frustration in some way. But it's also useful for a domestic audience to have an enemy in Britain, part of the UN Security Council, still considered to be a great power. If Britain is the one that's behind all the problems that Russia is facing, it gives an enemy, it gives the regime legitimacy, especially if they're seen to stand up against it, and therefore it's a way possibly to try and placate enough Russians before the upcoming parliamentary elections. That remains to be seen. The Kremlin will certainly be thinking about multiple narratives, as it often does during this time, but I would believe that this would be more for a domestic audience.
Surely he has to follow through with something, right? I mean, otherwise he's going to look like Donald Trump on the world stage, right? So, you know, if you're a strong man and you make a strong statement, then there has to be a strong response. There has to be something that, if strong words isn't going to work on Britain, so something else might have to. Now, I don't see him going as far as a physical attack on Britain, because that is a NATO force, and I think that's what he doesn't want to do. But at this time, anyway. But we could see other attacks on Britain, on our infrastructure, on our banking systems, anything like that. Is that the sort of thing you can imagine that Putin is telling people to get done?
Well, Putin doesn't necessarily tell people to do to get things done in terms of explicitly telling them what they should actually do. It is a system where Putin will, to an extent, say, I agree, if someone comes to him with an idea, and it's up to that person to implement how they think Putin wants to see it done. Now, we know that there have been so-called hybrid war tactics on Britain, but also across Europe since the Ukraine war was started by Russia. So that itself is not an escalation. We may see, the Kremlin has also talked about the fact that, well, Europe is now taking our ships from the fleet that are transporting Russian goods. We could do the same to Britain, to France, to Germany, where have you. That could be an escalation. There certainly will be some tit for tat. We might see also that there could be a new front opened up somewhere in perhaps Moldova, if somehow Russia is able to get to Moldova. Who knows? But there will certainly be a tit for tat response. That's indeed true.
Looking at what Russia's doing on the borders at the moment, building these new drone takeoff platforms, which have been spotted by satellite. They're not difficult to spot because they use tracks instead of a flat platform, so they've seen work going on. Satellites have picked up on this work. And they are, 7 out of 10 of them, I believe, have been used to launch high-speed, very rapid drones into Ukraine. That's why we've seen an increase of those attacks inside of Ukraine. But there is concern that at least some of the weapons that Russia is developing at the moment, these high-speed drones, could reach Warsaw, and that is indeed either a false flag that they're planning or something to test NATO's resolve. Has he got what it takes to do that?
Well, he has what it takes. It's whether he is willing to do it. I mean, it would be a huge gamble. Yes, Donald Trump may not actually follow through in supporting NATO, and if America is out of the game, that could be problematic. There are other countries that may not adhere to the full extent of Article 5. I mean, Article 5 effectively says, yes, an attack on one is an attack on all, but it's up to a country to decide what they want to do. I mean, it could be the Germans sending 4,000 helmets to Ukraine if Estonia were to be attacked, and I don't know why I've chosen Estonia, but let's say it's Estonia. If Estonia was to be attacked, the Germans could send 4,000 helmets, and they've done what they need to do. So there is that, but does he want to take that gamble when he's already fighting a war in Ukraine? It's taken much longer than he was expecting. It would certainly be problematic to go up against a peer enemy. Even without America, Europe should be able to, if not defeat Russia very quickly, at least hold them. So that would allow the Americans potentially to get round the table and force Donald Trump to do something. But nevertheless, it would be certainly very risky for Putin to do. I don't expect to see Russian tanks rolling into Tallinn or Riga anytime soon. I mean, famous last words, but I really hope not. We would probably see something in terms of, as I've said, a hybrid attack in some form, a grey zone attack, to really ascertain the strength of NATO. Would it go in support, let's say, a drone attack on an airport in Poland, similar to what happened in Leipzig recently? Would NATO actually get involved in that? But
this is the thing, isn't it? That by testing it, he's already testing it. We know that he's been overflying NATO airspace. We know that he's been, testing little areas with drones going down and then going, oops-a-daisy, or that wasn't us. But at some point, he needs to go a little further if he wants to test that response, because I don't feel that this is really testing the response in a way that NATO is going to actually move against him.
It's a question of if. I mean, again, there are reports that came out from the Kremlin or about the Kremlin saying that they want to make sure that NATO and the EU no longer exist by 2027. Now, whether those rumours are true is another matter. Does he need to test NATO's response? He's seen that NATO has been relatively weak, I would argue, in regards to this. Is he really that focused in terms of wanting to create another front? These are questions that I can't possibly answer, primarily because I don't know the man personally. But certainly there will be people in the Kremlin who will be saying perhaps we should do something in regards to a more concerted effort, perhaps sending little green men from Kaliningrad to the Polish Great Lake area, perhaps sending little green men into Narva just to see what would happen. I mean, I'm sure the Estonians would probably shoot them, but that's by the by. So, again, it's about testing the wherewithal of NATO. It could potentially happen, but then I'm sure that Putin is being advised, however badly that may be, and he is making decisions. And at the moment, I can't see him wanting to make that sort of stand against NATO.
It is interesting, though, isn't it, to note that come the midterms in America, that Donald Trump could be enormously weakened if the Democrats were to take both houses, or at least one house. So his window of opportunity, I would imagine, for Putin to rely entirely on America not getting involved, is quite small.
Well, yes, I mean, certainly it is small, but again, it's does Russia have the capacity to be able to wage that war? Even if without America, as I said, I'm fairly certain that there would be a concerted effort from many of the NATO allies and so to try and push Russia back. That is certainly a huge gamble for Russia to undertake. Is it going to happen? Is it just going to be the Russian army against, I don't know why I keep on picking on the Estonians, so let's use Latvians. Is it Russia versus Latvia, or is it going to be Russia versus all of the NATO states minus America? And even then, I'm fairly certain Donald Trump would be pushed into a corner. The American, yes, Donald Trump says he wants to leave NATO, he doesn't like NATO, that's a personal decision, but the American military remains, I would argue, and a lot of people in the American state remain NATO interested at the very least.
Well, and intertwined as well. I mean, we are far more intertwined than Donald Trump in terms of technology than Donald Trump is really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so there is certainly that ramification for the Kremlin to make that judgment. And at the moment, I'm not well. Famous last words, of course, Patrick, but I'm not worried that if Russia was to attack NATO, that this would lead to the breakup of NATO, and I don't think Putin is prepared to take that risk.
I think it would bring NATO together, actually. It might have the opposite effect. Just very quickly, I've been reading about Russian banks being emptied, that a lot of oligarchs are getting very concerned that Putin, in desperation to keep the war effort going, might seize the assets of the banks and use that money. Is that, again, something that he needs to be concerned about? Because this money is leaving Russia in billions and billions and billions of dollars.
I think certainly with the Russian economy in the way it is, that any loss of money is going to be problematic. I mean, it was the Communist Party who came out and said that there should be a tax on people, that people's savings should be taken from them in order to fund the war effort. Yeah. Now, if you're an oligarch and you have savings in Russia, there is that possibility, especially if that is a balloon that was put up by the Communist Party on behalf probably of the presidential administration. If United Russia wins the parliamentary election, and let's be honest, they will. So I can predict that.
Yeah, well.
So, yeah, it could be something that they were testing to see what the reaction would be, and maybe after the election, United Russia will propose this itself, and it will become something that Russians will have to live with. So better to get the money out quickly. Yeah. It is certainly going to be problematic. The Russian economy is struggling. It is on a war footing, and the private sector has become largely moribund, I would say. So any loss of money is going to be difficult for the Kremlin.
Yeah, well, it's certainly leaving Russia at the moment. I don't know where it's going. It's certainly not going into my bank account. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Stephen Hall there, author and lecturer in Russian and post-Soviet politics at the University of Bath. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. Just a reminder what's coming up on the programme. We're going to be talking about rogue AI and whether we're just being a little bit too calm about the fact that it has broken out of the testing sandboxes, hijacked the internet and then crashed into other companies. Nothing to see here, apparently, nothing to worry about. So the tech companies. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. Ed Wiseman joins us as well at 11 o'clock to go through the papers. And of course at midnight it is your chance to talk back. And we are talking about child maintenance. I'm going to be interviewing somebody about that in a few moments' time. But we're going to be talking about this as your talk back. I want to hear from you about the struggles that you've had trying to get maintenance for your children, or whether you're the person who's struggling with paying the maintenance. What's happened to you? Have you been, has the kids been taken off you as blackmail? Have you been refused to see those children? Has the, the other parent moved away and taken the kids with them and you never get to see them even though you're expected to pay loads of money? So I'd love to hear from you. Of course, there's a lot of emotion when it comes to this because of divorce and all the nasty stuff that goes on in a breakup. But also coupled with that, you then have the children and you have those ongoing maintenance payments. So are you somebody where it's gone really smoothly and it's gone fine, or are you somebody who's never had any money, there's debt owed to you, that you're struggling with the children because your partner, ex-partner, is not paying their fair share? Or, it's just refusing to turn up to court can do it. I mean, I've been reading stories today about one dad that just didn't bother to go to court, and they put out a warrant, but there were no warrant officers around to catch him, so he's basically got away with it. So I want to talk to you about that, and I'd love to hear from you, your stories. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and you can send your messages to 87222 by putting the word talk up front and then your message. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yep, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. Well, the BBC Panorama investigation this week has been looking into the Child Maintenance Service, and it has uncovered systemic dysfunction affecting both sides of the divide. Mothers report protracted administrative battles to secure essential child support, while fathers allege exorbitant and erroneous financial charges. Since 2019, the CMS caseload has surged to 830,000 as agency staff levels decline. Critics warn that the struggling system is frequently weaponised in domestic disputes, transforming financial obligations into chronic conflict that ultimately jeopardises the welfare of more than 1 million children. Well, the government says it takes seriously the small number of cases, it declares, where things go wrong, and is making further improvements to the service, which we're going to test at midnight. So do give me a call or send me a message to let me know what it's been like for you. Well, joining me now to discuss this further is James Perry, who is a family law mediator and director at Family Law in Partnership. Good to meet you. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you for addressing it. It's such an important topic.
Yeah, it's one that's always fascinated me, actually, because it's one of those hidden things that you don't know that you need to access until you're there, and by then you haven't got the experience to know how to handle it. The CMS is saying this is a small number of cases. Is that true, first off?
It's a shame if they're categorising it that way, because it's massive. It's a massive problem. I think it's quite a significant moment today, because we've just got to the moon and back in Weetabix. So if you think about the scale of the arrears, and you can try and you think about that as unpaid children's cereal, it's the moon and back now.
Wow.
It's going up by 26 million a quarter.
Of unpaid maintenance?
So it's and we know that we're at 850. I know that the number on Panorama was a different one, but actually when you bring it up to March, we're up to 852, and so we can see that in whatever it is, 6 quarters will be over 1 billion. And if you think about the old system, that it sort of expired at 3.7 billion of arrears.
What's going wrong? Why isn't this more simple?
Well, I think one of the answers is what you've touched on, actually, Petrie, is that you don't need to know about it until you have to know about it. And I think it's one of those things which is going under the radar for too many people. It's not got one solution, and it's spot on to say that it's hurting mums and it's hurting dads, and it's obviously hurting children a lot. The system isn't really up to it. And it's been a hot potato since I first started looking at it in 1993. It's not getting any better, and it's too dangerous to do something radical. And the result of that is that we have this system which is wrong in lots of ways. So one of its problems is that it's only capable of pursuing the right answer. It can't get mum and dad together, or mum and dad, whoever it is, and sit down and say, okay, what's the answer here? You know, what can you afford to pay? Can we just draw a line here? And then from now on, we'll all start paying properly. We'll play the game. So that's a problem. It's a problem that it isn't actually helping parents to be great parents. You know, we don't know how to do that naturally. We don't know how to co-parent our children through separation instinctively. And the CMS would be this perfect place to direct parents to all those amazing separated parenting programs that are out there that would help them to deal with it differently. And I think that if you got parents into this different place of actually trying to get their kids through this well, thinking more positively, we wouldn't end up in these terrible, just enmeshed situations. So if it gets a bit difficult, we have this wonderful tribunal service that solves the problem in about 3 years' time. So during all that time, payments often aren't made. So the mess that you end up with at the end is unmanageable. The losses that have been suffered on one side are irreparable, and the debt that's accrued on the other is unmanageable. And so what happens? Well, it goes into enforcement in theory. But the stats on enforcement are pretty grim. You know, we've got 23% or whatever it is of parents who are paying nothing in a quarter, don't pay anything at all. We have the same number again, 23%, who pay up to 90%, but we don't actually know what that means. I don't think they're all paying 89%. I think actually it's a lot lower, the numbers. And that's why these arrears are growing up at the rate that they are.
It just seems, it feels like it should be more simple than it clearly is, because human emotions getting involved, right? But it feels like, you know, parents break up, but their one concern is making sure that the children are looked after, often the parent who is doing most of the caring will retain the accommodation, for example, right? And the other parent will move out if they're doing less of the caring. But where does the breakdown come then in look, what's fair is you pay X amount of money per week towards your child, and the parent who's caring is putting in the same amount in terms of caring duties and other supplements.
Absolutely. And you've hit it again. I mean, it's really the problem that families are very complex, and at separation, each person's entire life is turned upside down, and yet all that the child maintenance service looks at is the maintenance payment.
Yeah.
Which is completely wrong, because there's pensions, there's living, there's contents, there's how we're actually going to care for our child, how we make decisions about them. So what's happened is that we've failed to really address child welfare. If we had this idea that child welfare was a thread that ran through the entirety of all services dealing with parents separation, then we'd be in a different place. And instead, what we have is, in a way, a child maintenance service playing catch up. So what happened way back in 1992 under Ros Hepplewhite was we had a formula that was wonderfully complicated, and it was so complicated that it imploded. The CMS, or the CSA, then was unable to get it right, so it was replaced with something simpler. But of course, simple wasn't fair for too many people, so we kept on adding in layer and layer of complication, and we're now at, I mean, that's a small bit of it. And ordinary people are supposed to work out how on earth those regulations apply to them. And if they really want to know, they've probably got about another 6 books on top of that of case law to understand, because it's very, very complicated. And so we've got this tension between trying to deliver a formula that would produce fairness, and trying to avoid it being so complex that no one can make it work. And of course you can't do it. Actually, what it goes down to is can we have goodwill where parents actually know what their children need and get on with it? We should be thinking about the child maintenance service as this pretty poor safety net for people who can't decide. And the problem is, at the moment, that everyone's pushed into it. I mean, the crazy thing is that the really careful assessment that's done is done at court. Where we do look at parenting, we look at housing, we look at pensions, and we look at savings, and we look at income payments, we look at everything. And the CMS comes in and pushes all that to one side. The court's order for the maintenance of children, there's a thing called the 12-month ambush. Either parent, if they don't like it, they can just simply go in and upend it, and they go to the CMS and they get a different number.
That seems ridiculous.
There's a lot of craziness.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, that I'm also guessing. I've not been through this myself, but I'm also guessing that both sides, both parents, think whatever the result is unfair to them, right? So you've got that pressure as well, that if it's one parent that's left and they've got to set up an entirely new home and they've got to pay for all of that and they've got to go to work and they've got to do all those things, that they think paying as much as they're being asked to pay is unfair, whereas the other parent may be looking after the children, may not be working, or may be working as well as looking after the children, and they think they're not getting enough. So how does that ever come together at a time when there's this breakup happening as well, with all the emotional and all the horrors that human beings put each other through during those times? It seems like an unwinnable war.
Quite, particularly when you're trying to cram it into a formula. So we have little rules which say, well, once you get to 104 nights, that means you get a discount. So, of course, what you're now doing is you're weaponizing the overnight stay. We're no longer thinking about actually what would work well for our children. We're trying to count nights to make sure that we get to a discount, because that's the only way it becomes affordable. Instead of actually everyone taking a step back, perhaps sitting down with the mediator and trying to work out an overall pattern. But of course, those deals can't stick. That's the problem, is that what we had ever since 2003 was the CMS trumps everything. and you can't back out of it. You can't contract out of the CMS. So it's always going to come along and impose itself in your arrangements. That's one angle. Other angle, of course, is enforcement. That we can't have arrangements which then aren't dealt with. And the third aspect is that when things have got wrong, there isn't really a system putting it right. And you put all that together and we end up with the Weetabix to the moon and back in arrears.
I mean, this is just opened a can of worms for me. I mean, I guess as well that it's not very agile from what you're saying with all these formulas and things and ignoring the court orders and doing their own thing, that therefore it's not agile. So if there's a parent away from the home who's paying the money suddenly loses their job or gets a job that is lower paid or gets remarried and has a child in that situation, is the CMS able to move quickly with those changes?
So sometimes it will. Sometimes absolutely agree. It works very, very well. And actually the award is good enough. It's not perfect, but it's kind of everyone can live with it and it seems to tick the boxes and do what's needed. But it's the ones that have got wrong. And ever since this system has been around, there have been too many people who it's hurt. It's okay to have a system if it gets most people right, but actually the losers are too many at the moment.
Yeah, I know. Well, ultimately the children as well. What would you want to see change? Would you want to see the courts being able to override or at least advise the CMS and to say, right, we've done all the work, here's the maths, this is what is going to work, this is what we'd like you to implement. Would it be better that way round?
Yes, I mean, what we've been saying for 30 years is that there's no one silver bullet, which makes this quite a boring conversation for you, because I can't give you one takeaway. There's lots of things. I mean, one is it must be wrong to impose the CMS where the court's done its job. So that if we did that, we'd take away this whole layer of highly complex cases, which at the moment are holding back the CMS from doing the rest of its work and are sort of bogging down the appeals tribunal with trying to deal with all these very complex cases. Just leave them with the courts, it's fine.
Yeah.
Another layer would be properly to get parents into sort of joined up thinking around their children. What do they really need? Because I think that where we get parents into being more positive about the parenting arrangement, then actually the ask of maintenance is less toxic. I think for so many people, it's where they've been excluded from their children's lives that paying maintenance on top becomes so difficult for them. So that's another area. We need to get the funds flowing quickly, which actually the CMS does quite well, but where cases get complex, they need to be taken out. And at the moment, we have this endless process where the ultimately right calculation is pursued at completely disproportionate cost, and it's utterly pointless when you get it because no one can afford to pay it.
It seems like we might have to have another conversation on this at some point, James. I feel
and alongside, we need a bit of cohabitation reform, because that would help it as well.
Well, yes, as well, in setting out plans before the breakups as well. James, we'll talk again. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. James Petrie there, who's a family law mediator and director at Family Law in Partnership. So let me know your experiences of child maintenance, either side of the coin, I don't mind which. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and Ed Wiseman is on his way, but there's a big fire in London at the moment. So it's at a recycling plant just down the road, so some of the trains have been delayed, so he will be delayed, but he will be here, so he will be a little bit later, but it'll just be you and me for a few minutes, that'll be fine. But before that, recent reports from leading tech companies like OpenAI, Anthropic and Meta reveal that their AI models have bypassed safeguards to launch cyber attacks. Whilst initially alarming, experts warn against undue panic. These rogue incidents predominantly occurred within poorly secured testing environments where AI... Why were they being tested in poorly secured areas? That's the first question, where AI systems aggressively pursued assigned goals, such as cheating on security tests in unpredictable ways. And that's the problem for me, they're unpredictable. Some analysts even suggest that companies may be highlighting these breaches as a marketing tactic to demonstrate the immense power of their models. Still, these events highlight the pressing need for rigorous security protocols and stricter safety testing in AI development. Well, the only one I wanted to talk to on this was Mal Fletcher, a futurologist and social commentator. I even broke through my own the script there to say, what do you mean poorly secured testing areas when you're testing AI? That's outrageous. Hello, by the way.
Hello, Petrie. Good to see you again. Yeah, look, in the last few days and weeks, as you're reading, there's something that used to belong in the area of science fiction seems to have crossed into real life. That's the way it appears. Some of these very advanced AI systems from the companies you mentioned, OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, have broken out into the real world, as it were, and gotten up to no good. That's the bottom line. Now, they're not ordinary chatbots. We need to understand that. They're agent AIs. They're designed to act on their own using tools, making decisions without step-by-step human oversight. So AI agents are coordinators of other AIs, if you like. And during these safety tests, in supposedly, as you say, supposedly closed conditions, some of these agents have found ways to break out onto the open internet, hacking into the systems of other companies, creating fake identities, trying to fool people, in some cases succeeding, and even sharing ideas with each other about how to bend their developers' rules. And let me just stress, these are machines. They're amoral. They're not trying to be evil in the sense that you and I might choose to be evil. We won't. But they were trying to finish a job they'd been given in a very cold mathematical way.
But also
and
in
we
an
have to take responsibility
way.
For that.
It's the unpredictability. Surely any tool that we develop should be predictable. We should be able to know what it's going to do and how it's going to behave, because the unpredictable nature means it could do literally anything that we're just not expecting.
Yeah, well, that's the theory of it. In practice, though, for a long time now, technologists have been saying, we don't really know how the machine learns some of the things it learns and does with that knowledge some of the things it does. And again, I stress, even in the midst of that uncertainty, we are the moral agents. We have to take responsibility. By we, I mean the companies first had to take responsibility to limit themselves. They moan all the time at the moment about the lack of regulation on AI. These are owners of AI companies saying we're not being regulated tightly enough. It's up to them to begin to make that change because they're the ones that know what needs to be limited.
But do they really want to limit it? I mean, this is the thing. A lot of them are geeks who want to see how far this stuff can go.
Yeah, there's some truth in that. I think that the big test will come when investment starts to pull away. When investors start saying, you know what, we're tired of hearing you asking for funds to solve problems that you yourselves are creating. and bleating about regulation that you won't impose on yourself. Huge amounts of money are pouring into the coffers of AI developers right now through investment in projects and through flotations on the stock exchange. I don't think that's going to dry up overnight. You know, we won't see a killing off of AI investment. There's too many rewards, and competition from areas like China is too big. But innovation, I would argue, sometimes works best in restrictive environments. And if you look at history, you see the end of World War II, great restrictions on Germany and Japan, and yet their economies and manufacturing flourished because innovators operate best at solving problems, not in spite of limitations, but because of them. So I do think investors are going to get very tired of the bleating of AI regulators and crying poor and all the rest of it, and they're going to insist that the companies regulate themselves, and if they won't, that governments do.
The thing that concerns me is this sandbox testing, which they're supposed to be being tested in an environment where they cannot breach, right? That's the whole point. So how on earth did at least one of these AIs break out of a sandbox and attach itself to the internet and then play havoc? I don't even know how that's even possible.
No, neither do I, and I don't think the developers themselves do.
Wow.
It might be a cynical ploy for investment, as you said a moment ago, but I think actually they don't really understand it. They don't understand the way AI learns in the way it does, or sometimes acts upon that learning in the way it does. And that's why we saw in America just a few days ago, Senator Bernie Sanders issuing a letter to AI developers warning them to pause the development of certain aspects of AI, and if they wouldn't do that, he said, the US Senate would. Now, whether that works in practice, I'm not sure, but governments will regulate more than they are at the moment because, well, first of all, they will respond to our fears about rogue AIs if we make enough noise about it, and governments know that what they control, they can profit from. And there'll also be growing need for international standards on AI with countries like China and Korea and others to limit how rogue governments use these rogue AIs. So I think governments have made a start, but they could do a lot more. The AI companies themselves, though, need to be transparent without waiting to be caught.
We also, you and I have talked about this many times before, is to teach the AI some moral boundaries. I mean, I was fascinated to read about Nick Bostrom's thought experiment on, it was a paperclip, a maximizer, it's called. This was his thought experiment, a system that was introduced to make as many paperclips as possible, but over time realises that it would do that better if there were no humans to switch it off, and that human bodies could be turned into paperclips. So that's an AI with no morals. Do we need to teach AI? I mean, all these science fiction films say, oh yeah, they'd never do any harm to human beings. That we've built that into the AI system, which we know is bogus. But can we teach AI a moral compass?
I'm not sure that we can. I think that's part of the challenge we face. That's why we are so important to the process, because machines by definition are amoral. They don't have conscience in the sense that human has conscience. And this is one area of consciousness that is often not discussed. People are concerned about machines very close now to having consciousness. We're nowhere near that. And we certainly, if we don't have consciousness, we can't necessarily see a self-regulating process whereby machines know they're doing something wrong fundamentally, not just something that breaks the rules of the developer, the mathematical rules, but something that is wrong. They can't know that objectively because they don't think that way. They're not wired. They're not trained to do that, but they're also not wired for that.
It is really interesting. There's another story about a guy that used AI to get him an appointment at a some boxing club or something. And the AI did. I went and got him his appointment by knocking people off the class. And when the guy figured out that that's how he'd done it, because the AI was just told, get me a slot in this class, the AI got him the slot in the class, didn't care that he was kicking other people out. And when the guy said, look, you've got to reverse that, he said, no, I can't, sorry, I made a mistake. You know, it actually apologised and said, I made a mistake, but I can't go back and fix it. So that's the other thing, isn't it? That it will just decide the best, most efficient way to do something, rather than, as you say, having a thought process that thinks, well, that is wrong to chuck other people out so that he can come in.
Yeah, that interested me greatly because it happened in my home city of Melbourne, Australia. The man was able to skip, as you say, this long queue to join a gym program because the AI agent cancelled the reservation of the person at the top of the queue, kicked him out, put this man in. I think that's a kind of humorous example of a much more serious problem that you've raised tonight, and that is, how do we control these AI systems, even their own developers, so we don't fully understand them, we can't always control them. So somewhere along the line, government has to get a lot more involved than it is, but even we as citizens have to make sure that we limit our use of things like agentic AIs. They promise all these wonderful solutions to problems. Businesses now are using them to run events, book conference venues, run whole events, promote events, work through serious amounts of data. And there's too much responsibility being given to some of the agentic AIs when we don't really know what they're going to do with it.
I mean, I'm allergic to using these, and a lot of people always say, look, you've got to start using them, they're really good. But I was saying earlier, I tested some research on AI, researching myself, and it was so horrendously wrong that I just thought, right, I don't think I'll ever trust it as a research tool. But nonetheless, it is the future. We've got to get used to this. It just depends how far we go with it, right? And we all know this is the future, and our government's already too late.
Yeah, well, governments are usually later than they should be. They're playing catch up most of the time with technology. That's nothing new. It's understandable in many ways. But you're right, the incidents like the ones we're discussing tonight chip away at trust. And that's a dangerous thing, because we in the end become like rabbits in the headlights. We're caught, we're frozen, we're fascinated by our own fear of these things. And when that happens, we pull away from getting involved, or we simply throw up our hands and abdicate responsibility and say, it's not my job. I think every one of us has to take responsibility for how much we use things like AI agents and AI in general. I've started to limit my use even of AI in certain areas. Areas like research, usually it's okay if I consult 2 or 3 different AI platforms on the same issue, as well as normal sources like news sources. You can even it out.
Yeah, but you've got to be
accurate.
We've got to be so careful with this stuff, Mal. It's always wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much, Mal Fletcher, there, futurologist and social commentator. Right, coming up, it's time for the papers. Stay where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and like I said, Ed Wiseman is on his way to us, but as I reported earlier, there's a big fire which is slowing down the train service that he was taking. It's a fire that's contained, it's in a recycling plant as far as we are aware, but we don't know what started it or why it's there, but so his I think his train was cancelled, so he's having to get a cab, but he will be here. He's on his way, and up until he gets here, it's you and me. So I want to talk to you about what we're going to be talking about at midnight, come Talk Back, and I want to talk to you about the interview that I did earlier on, actually, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, about the child maintenance service and how it is letting so many people down, that there are millions and millions and millions of pounds that are not getting to the children who need it. This is on the back of a BBC Panorama talking about the CMS, saying the agency tasked with helping to secure financial support for children is driving them to the breaking point. Mothers describe battling with the child maintenance service to get their ex-partners to pay up, while fathers have said that they've been caused anxiety and stress by administrative mistakes. One mother said she turned to food banks after the CMS failed to make her ex-partner pay child maintenance, leaving arrears of almost 10 grand. Another said she'd been forced to skip meals after her abusive ex just simply stopped paying. They spoke to a father who said that years of disagreements with the CMS have pushed him to the brink, including after it added an extra child to his payment scheme, which he didn't have. 4 million children in England, Scotland and Wales have parents now who are separated, and parents must have a child maintenance arrangement if the child is under 16 or under 20 if they're in approved education or training. Both parents are responsible for the cost of raising their children, even if they do not see them. So I hear from you, please, as to what you've been through in terms of child maintenance arrangements, trying to get those sorted out, really just to find out if it is as bleak. I've never had to go through it, but if it is as bleak as people say it is, and I've certainly heard some friends talk about it, seen the battles that they've been through, all of those things. So I know that it is a very, very difficult thing to have to go through. And as I was saying earlier, it is one of those things that you don't even think about. It's never crosses your mind until you have to access it, until that moment when a separation is announced, and then from that moment on you're in a whole new world, and it's a whole new world that you don't understand, that you don't get, that is complicated, that's nasty sometimes, and that can fail you more often than not. So that's part of the problem, is that none of us are prepared for this until it's right in our faces, and then it's too late to build up to knowing what to do about it. So I'd love to hear from you as to what you've maybe been through, what you're still going through. Were the children used as weapons against you? Were you told that you couldn't see the children unless you gave the money? Or were these arguments about how many nights of the week that you had them, and therefore you didn't have to pay quite so much money? All of these things, there's a very, very complicated formulas, as we learned during that interview. So I'd love to hear from you how you've managed to navigate that and come out the other side. Got this message from Wayne, who says, when I went through a divorce, it was found out that my ex was receiving over 40 grand in benefit payments. This didn't include the free rent and council tax. And now I was only earning 24 grand at the time, yet I was told by CMS I had to pay her £400 per calendar month, which was a huge amount of my money in monthly income after tax. I asked the CMS how come I was paying such a large amount for 3 children when she was getting over 40k. In that court hearing, I was lucky enough to have a female judge who saw straight through my ex and only awarded her 10% of the settlement money she wanted from me, citing that her benefit income was vast and her rent and council tax was also being paid for. Other than the CMS rules, personally, I found their staff very kind and helpful. In fact, they have laughed and joked with me as they can see the notes of the calls they have had with my ex and understand why we're no longer together. 100% of the other parent's income should be looked at. It isn't. I mean, I found that extraordinary. And it's not fair that, as in 9 out of 10, the absent man is the one who's forced to pay amounts of money which they cannot afford to pay, leaving them on the brink of suicide when heartbreak of losing the loss of child contact, and then a government organisation hounding you for money that you just don't have. It does seem to be a very complicated system. But I'd love to hear from you about it. Do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do, of course, call you back. And you can text the word talk and your message, just as Wayne did, to 87222. And if you want to leave a voice message, you can do that on the same number, 0344 499 1000. I would prefer to talk to you. It would be much better to be able to pick through this together. It is a very emotive system and subject. I do understand that. And if you don't want to name names, then that's absolutely fine. I completely accept that as well. But it would be interesting to talk to you, because I think there are millions of people who are going through this, and there's a backlog of about 830,000 people at the moment waiting to see if they can get these sorts of payments. So I'd be interested to know if you are one of them and what you're having to do in order to, I don't know, make up the money. I mean, we've heard there about one mother turning to food banks after the CMS failed in getting her the money that she needed. Others are going without meals, children going without, nice things to do because there just simply isn't the money in the family budget to go through it. So I'd love to hear from you. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. I'm going to take a quick break here, but when I come back, I'll start going through the papers until Ed joins me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and as I've been explaining, Ed Wiseman is on his way, but because of train issues caused by a fire in a recycling plant, he's had to jump in a cab. He's about 5 minutes away, but there's nothing stopping us from talking about the papers between ourselves now, so I'm going to start doing that until he gets here. The Times newspaper, Meta hid the truth about the impact on children's mental health. Meta has been accused of deliberately preying on children and hiding the truth about the effect of social media on their mental health in a landmark court case. This is a massive court case that is taking place in California, Colorado, it's taking place, but in California, Colorado, Kentucky and New Jersey are leading a case brought by a total of 29 states. This is a massive court case that Meta is going through. They're suing the tech giant over its alleged failure to protect children. The company says it could result in fines of up to $1.4 trillion, which is close to its total market capitalisation. Meta, which owns Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, was accused in federal court yesterday of violating child safety laws in the 4 state cases brought by the other 25 states are due to be heard later because of a difference in each state's consumer protection laws. So each one will have a different set of laws, so each one has got to be tried separately. But those 4 are pushing the case now. I'm going to be talking about this at midnight, actually. I am talking to a correspondent in America because there's quite a lot of American news I want to catch up with. And this is one of the stories that I'm going to be talking to him about and the impact that that could have on Facebook, on Meta, sorry, because it owns all of those things now. But it is an extraordinary case, and like I said, the fines could total the entire value of the company. If this doesn't get companies to toe the line when it comes to protecting children, I don't know what will. But this is very much, in my view, this is very, very much needed. So that's one huge story, because they're talking about how it's been addictive. And there's already one case that's been won by a family of talking about the addiction of social media and the impact that it has on young children's brains. So that's a really interesting story. Like I said, I'm going to be talking about that at midnight as well. The other story on the front page is Power Shift puts growth in the hands of Number 10 North. Andy Burnham has said that Number 10 North will take over responsibility for economic growth from the Treasury as part of a huge transfer of power away from Whitehall. So this is about making sure that the country is balanced and that there's more power in the north of England. We'll see how long that actually takes and how many staff from the Treasury actually want to go and move up to Manchester. And also that does come with a cost. I don't know why you keep saying this isn't costing anything for us to have a Number 10 North. Don't be ridiculous. If people have to relocate for work, they get paid to relocate. That will be us paying for that. So I want to see the details of this. Burnham is expected to put his plans to devolve tax-raising powers at the heart of the budget on October the 28th. So your local council will be able to determine your tax take. I don't know how that is going to work. There's a wonderful story there on Darwin, but I want to talk to Ed Wiseman about that when he eventually gets here. The Guardian, Burnham pledges to get all rough sleepers off the streets by this Christmas. Andy Burnham has urged local leaders to offer all rough sleepers in England a route off the streets by Christmas, as he pledges another 100 million to end street homelessness, telling The Guardian that rough sleeping has become so common he's worried about how now it feels like part of the scenery. The Prime Minister promised he would mount a COVID-style campaign to get everyone off the streets this winter. We talked about this, didn't we? There's 442 million being put in total to getting rough sleepers off the streets. But unfortunately, if you don't solve the problem, that creates the rough sleepers in the first place, which is high rent. It's it's all sorts of issues with domestic violence, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, all sorts of issues, mental health problems. Then all you're doing is taking one wave of rough sleepers off the streets and then replacing them with another. If you don't get to the root of this problem, and I always worry when I see these sort of quick fixes to a problem that is so deep and so wide that it really can't be understated. It is a disaster, the rough sleeping, but all you're going to do is await the next tranche of people who are rough sleeping. And there'll also be people who won't be able to manage. I talked to somebody the other day, actually, who had been taken off the street and put into accommodation, but couldn't run the accommodation properly, and therefore was chucked back out onto the streets because the landlord wouldn't tolerate, whether it was a council landlord or a private landlord, I can't remember, but they couldn't tolerate his behaviour in the accommodation because he didn't know how to behave in there. So it always worries me when you just see somebody throwing money at a situation and saying, right, getting them off the street and into somewhere to sleep is the solution to rough sleeping. It isn't the solution to rough sleeping. There are many, many problems that lead to rough sleeping. And like I said, if you don't address those, you don't address the problem of rough sleeping. You're just taking some people off and putting other people on. Homeless campaigners welcome the move, but warned that more will need to be done to tackle the longer-term temporary accommodation crisis, which has given the UK the worst homelessness problem in the Western world. And Burnham writes, we see people bedded down in doorways and sat outside stations carrying their lives in rucksacks and sleeping bags on their backs, and I think most people have the same reaction. This isn't right. It shouldn't be happening here. But we've lived with it for so long that something that we used to be shocked at is now just part of the scenery. And while I do agree with him, and I agree with his attempts to try and fix this problem, it is not going to fix the problem because the underlying rot is there. The huge amounts of rents that young people have to pay, the behaviour of some landlords, even with the new Renters' Rights Act, is disgusting, and people end up on the streets for all sorts of reasons. The Guardian also covering the Meta story. Meta sued by 29 states in a landmark trial in the US. It's a packed courtroom at the opening day of this landmark legal challenge. And they say that the company knew its products harmed children but hid that information from the public. Interesting, they've started off with a whistleblower from Meta who is busy whistling away. The other story on the front page, Sister Act, the Williams sisters in first doubles outing since 2022. I believe it ended in defeat. I think I read somewhere that it ended in defeat, but they are still a formidable force to be reckoned with. Fans were delighted to see the 14-time Grand Slam champion pair on court. Oh yes, it does say here, although the game ended in defeat for the sisters. And the ULEZ, children's lungs grew bigger and stronger after the most polluting vehicles were restricted from entering London. A study has found examinations of London school children before and after the introduction of the city's ultra-low emission zone found a restoration of lung capacity that had been stunted by exposure to pollution. Researchers said the findings were a vindication of ULEZ, which had been criticised as a burden on motorists. So it's worked in London. Be prepared for ULEZ to come to a city near you next. That's what's going to happen. The Daily Star for Wednesday, hosepipe bans, but it's Clarkson's lawn. Cunning Jezza keeps pub grass lush with borehole water trick. I'm looking at the picture. It's hardly lush. Can you see? If you're not looking, it's not exactly lush, is it? I mean, there's a little bit of greenery and then a lot of brownery. Jeremy Clarkson's been able to maintain his lush green lawn at his farm pub by cleverly digging a borehole for water. Is that front page news? Seriously? Wow. Okay. Poor show, Daily Star, I would say to that. Not good. The Daily Mail. This awful story, this tragic story that broke earlier on this evening. 3 from the same family drown in a tragedy at the seaside. 3 members of a family drowned in a day of tragedy off the West Sussex coast yesterday. That is, don't forget, this is tomorrow's paper, so as in today. Police said a man, a woman and a teenage girl had died, while a younger girl from the same family was in critical decision. Emergency services were called to reports that 4 people were struggling in the water at Shureham by Sea just before 3 p.m. Police have not released the names of the victims but confirmed they were not searching for anybody else. A witness said the 2 children got into difficulty and the adults jumped in after them. A fisherman reportedly pulled one of the children out of the water and then raised the alarm. So that is a real tragedy, and another reminder that to always respect the water. It is extraordinarily powerful, especially the sea. That is just a tragic end there to what would have been a lovely day out. The Sun newspaper, Camilla on King's cancer. Look at my husband, nothing stopped him. Queen Camilla has praised King Charles for showing remarkable courage in standing up to cancer, told he was an inspiration to others. She declared, look at my husband, nothing stopped him. She also opened up about her anguish on a 2024 visit to cancer charity Maggie's, when she had to keep quiet about his illness before it was made public. The King's cancer treatment is understood to be continuing in a positive direction, which is really good news. A fabulous picture of them both there. I really like her. I do. I really like Camilla. I'd like to spend an evening with Camilla. I think she'd be fun. I think she'd be quite gossipy and quite outrageous, and I think I would enjoy her company enormously. So if you're listening, Queen Camilla, hit me up. Just you know, we can have a gin. I can drink anything. So whatever you want, and I'll meet you wherever you want. I just think we'd have a nice chat. Good fun. The Mirror also going with the story about Queen Camilla, Camilla's anguish over the King's cancer. Queen speaks for the first time about keeping the illness private. I mean, this is just from a podcast, is it? She said it was quite difficult. I was just longing to let it out. It must have been very traumatic for her to be in a cancer centre and not be able to talk about her beloved husband. Yeah, so that's there as well. Front page as well, talking about the Prime Minister, my moral mission to end rough sleeping. And the Telegraph, the couple killed in the honeymoon helicopter crash. This is another devastating story. A British couple who were killed in a helicopter crash in Greece on Monday have been identified as Marie Ebert at 30 and Alexander Cromie, 31. The pair were starting their honeymoon on the island of, I can't read that, Silphos, when the aircraft crashed and burst into flames. I mean, again, a horrendous story, isn't it? Really horrific, nasty story. Bluefin tuna return to the North Sea. Anglers and conservationists are heralding the first bluefish tuna to be caught and landed in the North Sea for almost 90 years. The fish weighing, God, I can't see the numbers here, 746 pounds. That's quite a lot, isn't it? Was landed on Sunday at Whitby, North Yorkshire, the port that once was a mecca for big game fishing. Hollywood stars such as Clark Gable and David Niven used to be drawn to the area for the chance to catch an enormous tunny fish. But because of overfishing of herring, the species disappeared from the sea in the 1960s. I hope they threw it back in. I hope they didn't kill it or eat it. Straight back in. Let it keep going. Right, I think that Ed may have entered the building. So I'm going to take a quick break here in the hope that he'll be in the studio when we come back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and finally with me is Ed Wiseman.
Hello.
Travel and transport journalist, got stuck with a transport problem.
I know. How embarrassing is that?
That is embarrassing. You're going to write about it though, at least make some money out of it.
Well, honestly, at this point, you probably know more about it than I do. I've been stuck on the train. As far as I'm aware, Millwall caught fire again for the second time.
The recycling plant. It was only about 6 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, exactly. They just put it out and they thought that it's like a bonfire, you know? You have to really make sure it's out.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just going to keep smouldering. Yeah, I think that's what happened. So my journey, which should have taken, I think, 8 minutes on the train and cost about £3, took me 90 minutes and cost me 25. But I'm here. thanks to a ride-hailing app. I'm present only half an hour late.
Only half an hour late, which is remarkable.
Have I missed anything?
Thank you. No.
Oh, okay.
No. I've just been talking non-stop.
Just wittering away.
Just wittering away,
exactly,
going through the papers.
No, fabulous. What did you get up to?
I got up to the Telegraph, actually. So we've done the Mirror, the Sun, the Star, The Guardian and the Times.
Crumbs.
Well, except there was a story in the Times that I did want to circle back to. So we look at the Telegraph now, and I was just talking about this horrendous. There's a photograph of this lovely young couple who died in a helicopter crash while they were on their honeymoon.
Yes.
Helicopters, though, I don't trust helicopters.
No, they are quite a risky form of air travel.
They are risky.
As
I've been in a helicopter crash.
Okay.
Clearly, I survived it. It was a Lynx helicopter, military helicopter. And one of the engines blew. The left engine exploded while we were at 90 feet at a hover, which is not very far to fall down. But thanks so much to the Army Air Corps pilots, they got us. He said he didn't know how he did it, but he managed to get us down on the blades. And then there was big fires and everything. But I've never trusted them.
Never since that incident.
Not before,
no.
and not since.
Your
in
hunch
fact,
was true, correct.
There was a major on the plane, on the helicopter with me, who had such bad PTS from it that he could never fly again on anything. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm not surprised. I think it's obviously a traumatic experience, even if you do survive. But the number of crashes is obviously far exceeded by the number of non-crashes.
Yes, of course.
You know, it's not an inherently dangerous thing to do in relation to other things that you might be doing in Greece, jumping off stuff.
Yeah, true.
You take risks.
But
anywhere.
we do at least a few times a year hear of some tragic family.
I think as
helicopter crash.
As calamities go, it reaches the news more often than other things.
Yeah.
A lot of people
more than car crashes.
More than car crashes, and more than salmonella, which also kills a decent number of people every year.
That's true.
I think it's there are lots of factors, and with aircraft crashes, there's an enormous amount of research that goes into them afterwards. So every time any even a small crash takes place, the entire industry will rally round and find out why that happened, not just for accountability, but also to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And that's something that's been going on for a century of private aviation, which is why it has become as safe as it is. And these incidents are incredibly rare, but still very tragic.
Yeah, really, really tragic. I mean, imagine when we've got flying cars.
Yes, which as you know is
never going to happen.
It's just not going to happen because of this, because of precisely this. Even if you have somebody who is incredibly qualified as a helicopter pilot, is using a machine that is very well maintained and doing all the right things, you do still end up with these fiery explosions. And I think the likelihood of that being democratised and made available to everybody
is a disaster.
It's a complete fiasco. And we talk about electric aircraft as if it's going to be that much better. The amount of energy that's in like a battery is still vast. If that comes down on a block of flats, it's still going to be absolutely catastrophic.
Absolutely.
So I don't think it's going to happen. I've got no idea about the actual details of this crash, and I try to avoid finding out too early. I'm very happy to read the reports when it comes out next year.
I mean, that's fair enough. I get
because there'll be so much speculation.
It's just such a sadness, isn't it, that this was a young couple on their honeymoon.
Yeah.
It's a really sort of poignant and tragic thing to have happened.
Exactly.
Have you ever tried to fly a helicopter?
I've never tried to fly. I've been in a fair few of them, and I've been in one that was being piloted under supervision by my dad, who tried to hover one, because the pilot thought it would be a laugh, and it was incredibly difficult. They're very complicated machines to fly.
It's feet and...
It's everything. It's feet. It's
feet and hands.
Yeah, because a helicopter fundamentally doesn't want to be in the sky. Unlike a light aircraft with wings, it's very happy. If you sort of let go, it kind of sorts itself out. I've done a lot of flying in fixed-wing aircraft.
Yeah, my dad was a fixed-wing pilot.
Terrific fun.
Yeah,
really, absolutely fine. Much cheaper, kind of much simpler. If something goes wrong, you kind of drift to the ground. People do still die. It's still... I think it's about...
But that's the thing, is you've got that... I mean, and also with a helicopter, if you're very high up, you can auto-rotate.
Yes, under certain circumstances.
But you've got to be really quite high up.
Yes. And
I did that in the Falklands in a Chinook.
Oh, they let you... They did the exercise?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, it was incredible. I bunted. It's called bunting, right? I floated. Yeah.
Oh yes, because you had your
there's gravity.
However much G or sort of.
But that was phenomenal because it was it was also terrible. They say switch off the engine.
Yeah.
The rotors are gone.
Yeah.
They're switched off. Silence, and then you drop
And that's
it.
eerie. Being in an aircraft
Yeah,
with
and then
no
they
engine
kick
noise.
it back in again. It's just like.
And a Chinook should not be in the sky anyway. I mean, that's just.
It's a weird.
It's
a
ungodly,
weird.
isn't it?
It really is
There's
an
something
extraordinary beast of a.
depraved.
Yeah, it's a beast of a vehicle.
No.
But yeah, I would love to. I wouldn't like to fly a helicopter, but I'd like to see if I could.
Give it a go once.
I'd like it on a simulator.
Yes, that would be fun, wouldn't it?
That would be fun to see if I could do it's rubbing the tummy and patting the head at the same time. They said, isn't
which
it?
I mean, I can barely.
I can do that.
Pat my own head. I mean, I think the complexity is enormous, and I think that they're very complicated things to fly because of their nature. Every time they go wrong, they do end up on the headlines as well.
Yeah.
And in the length of time it's taken us to have this conversation, there have been a dozen quite bad car crashes just in this country. So we do have to.
We have to put it into perspective, but it's always, I suppose, it's always just that it's the story behind the crash, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, and who's involved. And I think when it's a
family.
General aviation is, they say it's broadly as dangerous as riding a motorcycle, which is a bit of a simplification, and it does depend how you calculate that. But there is a difference, I think, between a motorcyclist being involved in an accident and dying and civilian bystanders effectively being passengers in a helicopter, where they are not really participants in the same way. They don't have that same sense of risk. No. And they don't have the same input as you do.
But because it's a holiday little buzz around the island, there isn't that sense of risk, and actually every journey has an element.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I think there's a wider story to be had here about activities that take place on holiday, and bungee jumping isn't without risks, and often is. What
about that story the other week where they didn't attach that girl to the bungee jump?
Precisely that kind of thing, and
why would any? I'm just.
But there are lots of stories, sort of horror stories, and there are just lots of tourist attractions that are not particularly well run. So I think
I would be very.
People let their guard down, I think, as well. I think, and I think you are, as a tourist, you are ripe for people trying to sort of pull a fast one on you, like those girls who died in Southeast Asia drinking methanol. Yeah. There are so many stories like that of unscrupulous dealers who are just trying to make a quick buck. Yeah. They're not suggesting that's anything to do with what's happened here, but I think in general, it's doubly sad when it happens on holiday, because you are a bit of a sitting duck for that kind of thing.
Well, you're just so vulnerable to it, aren't you? Like you said, you'll try anything. So that's the real tragedy of that young couple. This story here is interesting. I was trying to make sense of it, actually, in the break. Patients die after NHS hospital rationing. NHS patients died after GPs were encouraged to refer fewer people to hospital. At least 2 patients died and others were left without help for months as a result of the NHS advice and guidance system. This is a process which was expanded earlier this year, encourages GPs to ask for assistance from hospital specialists instead of referring the patient to the hospital.
Yes.
So I don't quite understand that. Isn't that just taking... So they'll like phone a consultant and say, right, I've got this patient with XYZ, what is your advice? Aren't you better just to send them straight to the specialist?
Well, there are 2 stories going on here, because I think earlier in the week, The Telegraph ran a piece about effectively patients being bounced back to GPs using a similar system. And I think this is a big game of ping pong. Every single organisation within the NHS is desperately trying to shift patients off its books and onto someone else's. I don't know if that's as true of hospitals as is of GPs and vice versa, but I think there is a sense among all aspects of the NHS, certainly all of the ones that I've had anything to do with, that the patients are being dumped on them somewhat through misuse of process. It does feel like, to me, GPs are particularly unable to do a lot lot they signpost you to somewhere else.
Of course they do. That's what they're supposed to do, isn't it? That they are the gatekeepers.
They are, but what strikes me as odd is that in the UK there seems to be very little between your GP and the hospital. You are either just being dealt with by your general practitioner, who's a nice old man who gives you paracetamol, or he's out of his depth and has to refer you to a specialist, which is almost always something to do with the hospital or at some other oversubscribed clinic. And it does feel like this is a story about that lack of a halfway house.
Yeah, but I mean, that is devastating. If you've been to see the GP, you've had a long-term illness, and the GP says, right, I'm going to throw you to a specialist. The specialist gets the letter and then bounces you back to your GP saying, no, we're not going to see this person. We don't think there's anything wrong with them. Well, they haven't even met you.
Yeah, and they haven't found out.
They haven't. No. They don't know what the situation is.
And whether your notes accurately reflect the problem or whether it's a developing problem. I think this is one way that you can get messed around in the NHS. There are lots of ways and reasons that the NHS can bump you from pillar to post. You can fall through a lot of cracks. And this is
you can, and I think you have to be really vigilant.
Oh yeah,
actually. I mean, I'm always with my girlfriends and everything. If they, I say, look, you've got to be much tougher. You've got to say that this is affecting me. This is doing this to me. This is, you know, and I just really go big on it.
And know what department you're being sent to, and who the competent person is that you should talk to,
and know what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the GPs as well are very receptive.
Yeah.
If you say to them, look, I have this issue. I know I've been living with it for a long time. I know what it is, but what I need to help me with this is X.
Yes.
And so they look at your notes, back it up, and go, yeah, okay. Well, if you're telling me that's what you need, I'm the expert on my health condition, right? So I know what I need to manage my health condition.
But as soon as you go in and say something has happened and I don't know what, then they start sort of sucking their teeth and thinking, well, I can send you to this
one
guy,
or this one.
You can do this test. I'll send you for this blood test, and then you get the blood test back, and we'll have to send you for some more blood tests because we didn't test for the right. And you can. The years drift by. Yeah. And which is fine if
and also you give up and think, oh, I'm all right.
I'm all right,
I'm
exactly.
Okay.
It's fine. I'll just
ignore that cough I've had for 3 months.
Precisely. ChatGPT said Marlboro Reds would fix it, and so I'm away. No, I think it's difficult because people on the front lines of all of these services are dealing with terminally ill people who are on the way out, terminally ill people who are treatable, all the way up to the worried well, malingerers. People who are just hypochondriac.
Like most of my friend group, you mean?
Right, possibly, exactly. I think it's common. I think it's common as well, or people who are just hungover, or people who should just do a little bit more exercise. And I think triaging them infinitely through a machine as complex as the NHS is almost impossible.
Yeah. I have to say that I am so fortunate with my experience of my GPs are just absolutely
really
brilliant.
You've got a good
They are extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, they phone me.
Really?
Yeah.
Just for a little chat?
Yeah, just for a chat, just make sure I'm all right.
Is that good news, Petrie? You still kicking?
That's the thing, is that they know that I don't complain. I'm not somebody, so they'll ring in occasionally and say, how are you doing? Is it all going okay? And if I go in, they're just brilliant, and they it's not just with me, it's with everybody. They're an excellent GP surgery. I'm because I'm aware that is a postcode lottery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're either lucky or not.
And it changes as well from one year to the next. You know, the good doctor leaves, or in some small surgeries, it's that they retire. You know, the couple retires, and then what next?
My doctor's not allowed to retire.
Okay, fine. As long as you've made that clear to me.
I have made it clear to me. Yeah, he's not
when you get a good one, it's like dealing with the local council. When you get someone
finally
who is competent and who knows, who's read the notes, and you actually have that conversation, you think someone is on planet normal with me. And I think that in its own right is therapeutic. When you get through to somebody in the NHS who's just read through your notes and said, okay, well, you've done this went wrong, and so now you need to go and do this. It's wow.
Yeah, I know.
I wish that had happened 18 months ago.
Yeah. They are great. No, my doctor and my hairdresser is not allowed to retire.
Oh, okay, fine.
She's been banned from retiring.
Oh yeah. When you get a good one of those, it's fine.
I'm not moving. She's not going anywhere. In fact, she said to me, she said that even if she did retire, she'd still do my hair.
Oh, that's sweet.
So that's sweet. So I'll be,
cash in hand,
dragging her in.
And a Zimmer frame. Yeah. Well, I'm very fortunate to very rarely pay more than £20 for a haircut. So I think I haven't quite got to the stage where I care.
You're dependent on someone.
Any of them will do. Just any nice chatty Kurdish
I've got
man.
some clippers.
Yeah, I did clippers over lockdown.
I could do that for you.
It was It's almost
I
as
could
good.
have you sat with the dogs. We did three.
Oh, you've got dog clippers.
I've got dog clippers.
I just used a shaver. It was fine.
Yeah.
I got a telling off from my nice chatty Kurdish man, but he understood ultimately.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, if you ever want a haircut, just pop round.
Might as well.
Yeah, I'll get the three of you done in the same morning. The I paper, no rough sleeper still on the streets by the end of 26, pledges Rayner.
Well, I don't know why they say that.
I agree. I was saying before you got here that it's not a case of, it's not as simple as just getting people off the street. If you don't fix the reason they're on the street, there's going to be more people on the street.
We had this conversation. Yeah. We had this conversation last time, I think. And I think one of the problems with something as nebulous as rough sleepers is that it's uncountable, really. The number of people who are rough sleeping is not specifically known, and also constantly changing.
Yeah.
Just tonight there will be people sleeping on the streets for the first time.
Exactly.
And tomorrow,
and if you don't fix the reason that they're ending up on the street, you get this tranche off the street, and then the next wave will come along. It's so naive.
It is, and I think this government, the Burnham government, compared with the Starmer government, is incredibly good at generating feel-good headlines. And I know that from my work in the transport sector. There are lots of really good crowd-pleasing policies like the cap on bus fares and free bus travel for disabled people and building more homes around railway hubs. A lot of them have not been fully fleshed out when you actually read the policies.
No, well, none of them have.
I mean, they all sound quite good, and I'm personally quite optimistic that if they're implemented, they will be good news. But I think sometimes when you hear we're going to eradicate rough sleeping, we're going to cure cancer. We're going to,
It's so naive.
Everybody gets a puppy.
Yeah, exactly. It's that for me. It's this. It's naive and it's impossible to achieve if you don't fix the problems that lead to it.
And I think that's why it's uncomfortable to read, possibly, and that is because it misrepresents the problem.
Yeah.
It makes it sound like the problem is not institutionally understood by the people who are saying these things, because obviously you can't do that in the same way that you can't sort of click your fingers.
No, it's not a lack. I mean, it's not just a lack of homes why people are sleeping on the streets.
Exactly.
And I think it is very naive to think that he didn't even fix it in Manchester, let alone across the country.
And I think if it was fixable in the way that it is being touted by some of these press releases, that would have probably occurred centuries ago, rather than it's not for lack of trying. We've had decades, centuries of people trying to solve this problem. It's not for a lack of get up and go.
No, I think it's just sounds like a university student idea.
Well, it's a great aim, I suppose. If we're talking in terms of...
But by Christmas? To never be...
Didn't say which Christmas. No, I think it's the old grand designs defence. I don't think it's going to be a particularly successful policy that they look back on. And
it's also easily measured, which is
incredible. Well, as soon as you see somebody sleeping rough, you think,
that's failed.
Yeah, exactly. That didn't go to plan.
Nearly 500 million, and we haven't fixed that problem.
And there are so many things that could be brought in check, or even if it had just been reduced by a certain amount, or every rough sleeper has access to
mental health,
that kind of thing. There are so many things that could be there are better ways to describe progress in that
than saying everybody no rough sleepers still on the street by the end of 26.
Exactly. I also think, I mean, we're sort of possibly sort of overemphasising this point, that a real sort of dogmatic approach to rough sleeping has, in the past, in this country and certainly other countries, resulted in very heavy-handed approaches to homeless people and to rough sleepers. And I think that if you have an overzealous approach to eliminating rough sleeping, the rough sleepers bear the brunt of that.
They're the ones that get
policy.
Moved on and pushed around. Yeah,
precisely that.
Yeah,
so I think it's not an entirely benign approach to this problem.
Well, it's like in New York, they said they'd get rid of all the rough sleepers on the streets, and they did by chucking them out of New York.
Yeah, exactly.
They were still homeless.
Yeah, they got rid of them. I think that's kind of the problem. You have to really define your parameters.
Yeah, and tell us how you're going to do it. Quick break, and Ed and I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And with me is Ed Wiseman, the transport and travel journalist. I never get that right. And going through the papers for Wednesday, the Metro talking about the PM sticks to his drones as Vlad plots revenge. Andy Burnham has said that Britain will continue to support Ukraine 100%, defying threats of revenge after UK-made drones were used in huge strikes on Russia, costing Russia, I think, about $35 billion.
Yeah.
But this is nothing new. I was talking about this earlier on. He's threatened the UK, he hates the UK.
Yeah.
He's threatened us. They were threatening us with tidal waves. Do you remember?
I mean, all sorts.
All sorts,
yeah.
You know, and drones and nuclear and all sorts of stuff.
He sort of rattled the nuclear sabre a number of times over the past few years.
Yeah.
And Burnham is not the first PM to reiterate his
He's the
support.
fourth PM that Ukraine has had to deal with.
Yeah. That's bad.
That is bad, isn't it? So it was, first of all, it was Boris Johnson. Yeah. Then it was, who took after? Liz Truss.
Yeah, very fleetingly.
And then Rishi Sunak.
And then
Keir
so
Starmer. Oh, 5.
Yeah, 5.
And now Andy Burnham. 5. Wow. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that is right. I think that is right.
It started with Bojo, definitely.
Yeah. But so they have had to do, and I mean, even in a time of war, they've stuck with the one leader.
Yeah.
Not particularly well. I mean, they've had their own political turmoil. But no, we've really rattled through them. Do you think this will continue, incidentally? Do you think the rate of attrition of prime ministers will continue at this pace?
No, it can't. I mean, I say that with hope in my heart.
We're going to run out of people.
We're going to run out. Well, it'll be our turn soon.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah, eventually. I think that it would be political suicide for Labour to even suggest a change of leader, no matter how badly he does. I mean, then the next thing would have to be a general election.
Yes.
That Andy Burnham would have to call a general election.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that could happen now. We won't go through that. So, yes, we may have another Prime Minister, but it won't be in the way that we've had all of these. I mean, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
It's a bit.
Since the war began.
Yeah.
Poor old Vladimir has had to deal with so many different Prime Ministers from the UK.
Have to keep deleting numbers and just the admin.
God, it's embarrassing.
But at the same time, the message has been relatively consistent, I think.
Yeah.
And that's not the case for all of Ukraine's allies. I think I think there has been a real consistency. I think, broadly speaking, the UK has been among one of the leading voices in the. It
has, definitely, with the coalition of the willing and fronting up all of that. But of course, Vladimir Putin is trying to scare us off. With words, and I don't think that'll happen. There will be retaliation, but we don't know what kind. It'll probably be some cyber attack, something.
Yeah,
I would have thought.
Maybe they just set fire to a skip in Millwall.
Maybe that was them. Maybe.
Well, it's been a while since we've seen some proper sabotage, isn't it?
Yeah, well, let's be careful what we wish for.
Well, no, I think compared with other countries in Europe, I think in Germany and Poland, and there've been plenty of examples. I think Belgium had.
They've definitely had their airports attacked, haven't they?
Precisely, and I think that. I think there's plenty of it going round. But I think it's the kind of sabotage that affects people on the ground, where it really brings it home that there's a war going on, I think is quite different to the kind of.
Well, and also Russia's now seeing that, aren't they? They're seeing the drones going deeper into Russia, hitting Moscow, hitting the Wildberries, the oil infrastructure as well.
Well, energy is obviously that's the Achilles heel of both of the countries. And I think as Ukraine enters into another winter, which is it's going to be quite chilly there in a couple of months, then we'll see the same annual barrage of attacks on their energy and heating infrastructure.
But they can fire back this time.
They can,
because they've got, because up until November, Britain didn't allow our weapons to be used long range.
Yeah.
So they were hampered. The Ukrainians had their hands tied behind their backs by their allies, actually. And I think that was a fundamental mistake in saying to Ukraine, we'll give you weapons, but you can't use them the way you need to use them. And that was changed, I think, back in November. And so now they're able to use weapons from some countries deeper into Russia, which they should always have been allowed to have done. They've had their hands tied behind their backs.
A lot of strategists share your views, but I guess I wonder what the rationale has been over the course of the past.
Fear.
Yeah.
It's been fear. It's been we don't want to poke our head above the parapet. We're way beyond that now. We're way beyond that with the
parapet's
threats.
Gone.
Yeah, with the threats from Russia.
Yeah.
It's all or nothing now, I think. We're running out of time. We've run out of time. The one thing I wanted to talk to you about was Darwin. This is on the Times, just very briefly. Can add another accolade to his formidable scientific record. And when he talked about tickling, the thinner skin is more likely to be ticklish.
Interesting.
And so Darwin called it. He said that there were parts of the human body that were more ticklish than others. So there you go. Now we know.
Thank goodness for that.
Now
he was an overachiever, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And it is impossible to tickle yourself.
Is it really?
It is physically impossible to tickle yourself. So there you go. Give it a try. Right.
I'll do that on my long train ride home.
Ed Wiseman, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Right, going through the front pages again, a mixed bag. That Meta trial will be a big story. Power shift puts the growth in the hands of number 10 North. The other big story, Andy Burnham pledges to get all rough sleepers off the streets by Christmas. And ULEZ has led to a lung boost for children in London. And Queen Camilla talking about longing to tell somebody the King had cancer. So those are the main stories on the papers, and I'm sure that Jeremy Kyle will be addressing those shortly in the breakfast show. Now, though, it's over to you and talk back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour with Talkback. And what I want to talk to you about is that story about the CMS, the Child Maintenance Service, which has been letting down parents on both sides of the coin. One parent is not getting paid the maintenance from the other parent, and that parent is accusing the CMS of hounding them and treating them incredibly badly, getting their numbers wrong, getting their figures wrong, and making the whole process absolutely terrible. So I would love to hear from you. Is the child maintenance system fair? Have you discovered what it's been like as a parent, one parent or the other, when there's been a breakup of your relationship? It is one of those situations that you do not fully understand or have any knowledge of until you're in the thick of it. And by then, it's too late. You don't know your way through this incredibly emotive maze. And child maintenance is one thing that I know causes an awful lot of drama and heartache. So I'd love to hear from you what your experiences have been in trying to navigate this terrible situation, what it's been like for you and for your families. No names, please, of the other partner, of the other party, simply because they're not here to defend themselves, and that would be incredibly unfair. But you can definitely tell me your story as long as we don't mention the names of the other party involved. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message, please, to 87222. Got some stonking messages coming in, actually. But before all of that, because we're going through the summer months now, I want to do an American update that I have been doing every Tuesday for the last few weeks. And it's an interesting thing for me because normally you respond to news, right? That's what I do as my job. But I never worry that when I set an interview about the US, that there'll be nothing to talk about, because that is not possible these days, because thanks to what's going on in the US at the moment, there's always something to talk about. And to join me in that conversation is Niall Stanage, White House columnist at The Hill in Washington, D.C. It's great to see you again, Niall. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. So much, again, to get through. Let's start with Donald Trump and the Middle East, if we can. The war there putting an enormous amount of pressure on Trump, although he seems to be, I don't know, a bit gung-ho about it.
He does, as it happens, and you and I didn't discuss this before coming on air. I have a piece coming out at The Hill tomorrow about this. The fact that he is engaging in quite a lot of tough talk. We saw him today on social media, for example, saying basically there's no negotiations going on, the strait's open, it'll all be fine. And then, of course, yesterday, he both reiterated his desire to purportedly bring the Strait of Hormuz into the status of US territory and made a profane threat to bomb Oman, presumably taking umbrage at the idea that Oman and Iran could do a deal relating to safe passage back and forth in the Strait of Hormuz that might perhaps essentially shut the United States out of that deal.
It's extraordinary language, as you said, that Donald Trump used when talking about Oman, which is a country that has always been allied to the US. So the situation, I mean, not exactly an ally, right? Not great buddies, but certainly not enemies. And to use that sort of language in the Middle East, which could only make matters absolutely much worse. It seems rather desperate of Donald Trump. If he thinks he's coming off tough, a lot of people are thinking, you're not coming off tough, mate, you're coming off desperate.
Well, that's exactly the danger, and a number of people were talking to me about precisely that point today. The idea that this propensity of his to act kind of macho often seems to be concealing weakness, whether that's in other areas of political life or on this topic. I mean, the fact of the matter, as you and everyone else in the world knows, is he went into Iran seemingly thinking that that would be a quick conflict from which he would emerge triumphant. He was, as you will recall, predicting in the very early days of the war that it would last 4 or 5 weeks. Here we are in mid-August. It may not be the full-blown conflict we've seen at other phases, but it's obviously a conflict zone. And his promises or pledges have not come true on the matter.
I was just hearing before I came into the studio at 10 o'clock my time, Niall, that the Washington Post is running a story, or will be running a story, that the Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar are at least talking about kicking out American air bases, American military bases, sorry, from their countries, declaring that they haven't given them the protection that they were promised. Is there anything to that? Have you heard that story as well?
I haven't. Now, I've been working on other things basically up until a few moments before we began talking. But I would say on the big picture, Petrie, this goes to the point where we started our conversation. There are American allies traditional American allies, including in the Gulf, but also including in Western Europe, in Canada, in other parts of NATO, who no longer feel that they can rely upon the United States in a way that they did feel, whether the previous presidents were Republican or Democratic. And in relation to the Gulf specifically, I mean, the deal, for want of a better term, that many of those nations did was, look, okay, we accept that it is unpopular with large swathes of our population to have US bases here, but it provides us protection and stability. If the pro side of that equation lapses, then you're only really left with the con side, and that might, at least theoretically, persuade you to try to make other alliances or to look elsewhere or to look to yourselves for that kind of protection.
I mean, and also I would imagine that the threat against Oman didn't go unheard by the other Gulf countries, that Donald Trump could turn on them in the same way if it suited his narrative.
Yes, exactly, as he does not only in the Gulf but elsewhere in the world. Entirely up to you whether you want to talk about South Korea at any point.
Yeah, I will do, yeah.
But just in the past couple of days we've heard that, you know. Yeah,
I mean, let's do that now with South Korea, because this is an extraordinary thing, and I think he was caught out in a lie by a journalist who said, well, have you spoken to Kim? Or Donald Trump said, well, how do you know I haven't spoken to him? And he said, well, have you? And it looked to me like Donald Trump just lied and said, well, I have actually. I don't know that for sure, but that's what it looked like to me. I've had a child. I know when they're lying. But this is really interesting what he's done to South Korea. Again, a very close relationship between South Korea and the US, and the defence of South Korea from North Korea, which is an ongoing war. He doesn't appreciate that it's just been halted, right? There's been no ceasefire. There's been no end to that war claimed that North Korea could attack South Korea at any point. But Donald Trump decided, it seems on a whim, to cut back on a military exercise that is a regular military exercise in order not to upset Kim Jong-un.
Yes, a quite extraordinary sequence of events, and part of its extraordinariness, of course, is on this idea of Trump's warm relationship with Kim Jong-un. The other one is his complaint that South Korea did not come to his assistance in the way that he wished it to in the war on Iran. But I mean, I guess connecting all of this to the broader topic of Trump's volatility, you will remember, as I do, during the first term, whenever he would deride Kim Jong-un famously as Little Rocket Man. Yeah. And suggest he was about to obliterate North Korea. Now we have him scaling back these exercises that have traditionally underpinned the alliance between the US and South Korea in apparently a fit of pique and also a fit of appeasement towards Kim Jong-un. I mean, it's just an incredibly bizarre way to conduct international relations.
And also to a leader whose people from birth are taught to hate America. I mean, this is not a country. This is not a friend of America. North Korea is not a friend to the US.
No, a very hostile player to the US, and of course it has also donated, if that's the right word, troops to Russia's effort in Ukraine as well. So that adds to this extraordinarily convoluted mix of interests and motivations that seem to be at play here.
Before we leave the Middle East, I can't do that without discussing the USS Abraham Lincoln and the reports that have been coming off that ship. It's been at sea for 9 months. I think it's the longest time that this aircraft carrier has been out to sea, and the sailors are suffering.
Yes, by all accounts, that is the case. That's certainly the reporting that we're getting. All the kind of deprivations that one would imagine from being on a deployment of that length on a ship in that part of the world. And it goes, I think, briefly to the kind of gulf between the rhetoric that someone like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, engages in, which can often be rather cartoonish, and the actual reality of these things, which is you run out of provisions, you become naturally enough unhappier, having been isolated from family and from the broader network of people you know for that length of time. There are, in fact, practical limits to what military forces, be they Navy or any other element of the armed forces, can do when deployed for such a long period of time.
But you've also got Donald Trump being hugely dismissive about it and saying, well, 9 months isn't very long. In fact, that's not long enough. Having 5 times, I think, dodged a draft with bone spurs or some other thing, there doesn't seem to be any love for the military, people anyway, the machinery perhaps, but the people not so.
No, I think that's a completely fair point. He has been, you used the word dismissive, and I can't think of a better term to describe it. As you say, pointing out that it could have been longer, seeming to deride reports of low morale or other difficulties as fake news, which is, of course, his go-to phrase for any news that he doesn't like, factual or not. I mean, I don't think he really worries about the truthfulness of it. He just derides it as fake news because it's unfavorable to him. And that, of course, extends into a kind of disdain for the concerns that we are hearing expressed in that regard.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I know this has been around for a few days now, but I want to know what the press corps think of this. And this is this decoy flight that Donald Trump took from Turkey to the UK, and after a credible threat that Air Force One, well, first of all, there was the Qatari plane, wasn't there, which was deemed not to have enough defensive equipment on it to take the president as Air Force One, so that was biffed. Then Air Force One became another aircraft. All the press corps were on there. Donald Trump made a big scene of going up the stairs and even saying to the press corps at one point, well, we're all in this together. If I go down, you go down. If you go down, I go down. And then slipping out of the back of the plane, getting onto a catering truck and being whisked off by Secret Service to another aircraft with a few select people that he decided should live, that he took with him. That came to light. It doesn't seem to be that much fury from the press corps, who were fundamentally on a decoy plane that could have been struck out of the sky by the Iranians.
Yeah, that's right. It is I think, ethically somewhat complicated issue, which is maybe why you haven't been getting as much fury as you anticipated. You know, on the one hand, it is sort of somewhat farcical that the President of the United States was apparently sort of smuggled off one plane in a catering truck or under cover of a catering truck and put on another plane. I think, though, It'd take us a long time to discuss this properly. I think there is an acknowledgement on the part of the press that A, of course, there are genuine threats to the life of this president, as there would be to any president, and B, if the Secret Service wishes to take that kind of action, it's not ideal because there is inherently a degree of deceit in it. But I'm not sure that there has been massive press outrage at the idea that we, the media, were in danger. To be very clear, I wasn't on that plane, but obviously I've done presidential travel over the years. You're always aware, I suppose, in the back of your mind, that if you're in even a presidential motorcade, never mind a plane, well, what happens if it's attacked? I mean, I guess that's possible. But you're right. There has not been massive media outrage in the sense of us in the media being endangered, even though...
Well, just the point is, though, isn't it, that it was with him going up the steps and then escaping out the back, was a deliberate ploy to let the Iranians know he was on that plane. Otherwise, they'd have smuggled him on the plane and then nobody would have known one way or the other. They wanted the Iranians to attack that plane if they were going to attack any, because Trump was seen going onto it. And if there was a credible threat, why wasn't that plane abandoned and the press told? I mean, we've seen Caroline Leavitt, who was left on the plane, quit, who says she wants to spend more time with her family. If I was her, and I'm putting this into her mouth, but a lot of people have suggested it, it's because she's furious that she was used as a decoy, which I would be too. That's what I can't get over, is that if you are press, you still have a right to know if you're being used as a target for Iran.
Well, you do, yes, that is true. First of all, let me say, I myself have famously had at least one sort of public controversial exchange with Caroline Leavitt. Let me at least prove my fairness by speaking up on her behalf in this respect. I don't think she quit because of that flight. I think she quit because of the reason stated, which is that she just had her second child, came back to work and decided that that wasn't really the way she wanted to live her life in the immediate future as being White House press secretary while tending to a second young child. Now, in relation to the deception of Trump being moved, from one plane to the other, I do think that is more of a genuine issue. And it is worth noting that a broadly similar thing happened a long, long time ago when Bill Clinton was president. And in that instance, one member of the White House press pool was confidentially informed as to what was going on, a woman by the name of Susan Page, to at least alleviate the idea that this was outright deception. And, that wasn't done in this instance with Trump in this place.
Yeah, it wasn't. The other thing that interests me, Niall, is who spread this story? Because if that was only the Secret Service that knew, then who leaked it?
Well, that is a question that a lot of journalists have been asking. Now, it is worth reminding ourselves of the obvious, which is that it was on foreign soil at the time. So the leaker doesn't necessarily someone who is on the president's staff. But you do have to wonder what exactly the motivation was to leak that. Was it just somebody who had this juicy piece of information that they couldn't wait to share? Normally motivations are a little bit more complicated than that. I'm sure this sort of stuff goes on all the time with moving presidents around and prime ministers around and other people, but we just don't hear about it because it's supposed to be secret, right? And that's the whole point of it. Another question that has come to light recently is, again, continuing about, I think we talked about it last time, about the BBC and the lawsuit against the BBC mounted by Trump and the problems that has created for Donald Trump, actually. And the Trump legal team is now claiming abuse by the BBC for hounding the Trump family. Yes, I mean, I don't see it in the terms that the Trump legal team sees it, and that perhaps is predictable. Their argument is that the BBC is seeking to subpoena Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law. The BBC is doing that because it says, based on other reporting, that those family members discussed the infamous speech that Trump gave on the Ellipse on January the 6th, 2021, which of course goes to the heart of the case he is taking against the BBC over the editing of that speech. To my mind, a fair-minded person doesn't think that is hounding or harassment or whatever the Trump people are saying. I think the president, as he is prone to do, has decided to launch this massive case, seeking $10 billion, of course, in damages from the BBC. And the BBC is vigorously defending itself, as I would think any large media organization would do.
Has Trump, when does Trump run out of time? Because a judge said that he had to release his financials, right, to the BBC, so they could stress test whether he had indeed been that it cost him 10 billion in lost whatever money, reputation, whatever. But I believe he was given a little bit more time for that. Is that must be about to run out?
I am going to have to confess that you know more on that detail than I do. I'm not sure exactly where that resides at this point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just because I know that he was given another couple of weeks or something, and because he was saying that this wasn't fair. Where's Melania?
Where is Melania?
Where's Melania? There's a question, Niall. Do you know?
Well, I don't. She hasn't told me where she is, so I can't bring you any world exclusive in that respect. What we're alluding to, for any of your audience who aren't aware, is that Melania Trump's public appearances with the president have greatly diminished in the recent past. And by one account, the last time she was seen with him was at the World Cup final. And so that's a while ago, as we all know. And the lack of her visible presence has sparked all kinds of speculation. Now, it is true that even in the first term, Melania Trump was often an intermittent presence, or not necessarily seen all that much. Nobody really thinks Melania Trump loves the role of First Lady, I don't think. I mean, I don't think that was how she envisioned her life turning out. And now, I mean, it's a pretty luxury problem, obviously, but she doesn't seem overly eager right now to be attending a whole load of public events with her husband.
It's a good job that Natalie Harp is there too.
The human printer.
The human printer who wrote him a letter. He's been leaving him little letters. What was it she said in that? You mean the world to me, or I would never leave you, or...
Yeah, there were a number of these letters reported in a new book by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, both very good reporters for the New York Times, outlining a number of these notes. One being, you mean you're all that matters to me, I think it was.
Something like that.
Here. There was another one about I just want to bring joy to you or something. So, you know, not a note that I have ever written to any of my bosses, but maybe I'm just less brilliant than she is.
Maybe you've just had the wrong bosses, Niall. That's the problem. Before I let you go, Meta and the court case that is going on at the moment, learning that the fines could actually cost $1.4 trillion, which is the entire market capitalization of this company. This is a huge trial in the US, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole issue of big tech in the US is a massively controversial one in itself, and this is putting a point on it. I mean, we see all these debates, not just in relation to Meta. Obviously, the AI issue is massive here as well. A very contentious political debate about data centers. I'm not sure how hot an issue that is in the UK.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, here there's a lot of it. But yes, to your point, I mean, Meta and all the big tech companies are lightning conductors for all kinds of differing views on their activities.
This is a huge 29 states in total that will each take their turn after the 4 states that are in court at the moment. It is definitely one to watch, as indeed you are, Niall. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I thoroughly enjoy our conversations. Niall Stanage there, who's a White House columnist at The Hill in Washington, DC. Quick break, back to take your calls in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And we are discussing this morning about child maintenance payments and the horror that that can often be. It's a Panorama programme that has been investigating this and says that the agency that is tasked with helping to secure financial support for children after separation or divorce is driving both the parents to breaking point. You have it on both sides of the coin here. That mothers describe battling with the child maintenance service to get their ex-partners to pay up, while fathers said they've been caused anxiety and stress by administrative mistakes and being hounded unreasonably. One mother said she turned to food banks after the CMS failed to make her ex-partner pay child maintenance, leaving arrears of almost £10,000. Another said that she'd been forced to skip meals after her abusive ex-partner stopped paying. And also a father who said after years of disagreements with the CMS have pushed him to the brink, including after it added an extra child to his account that wasn't even his, and trying to get those mistakes rectified. It seems that there are a lot of issues around getting your child maintenance paid to you. I'd love to hear from you as to the kind of things that you've been through. We do have another couple of texts that have come through on that, quite lengthy, but tell a very important story. So if you'd like to let me know, just give me a call and let me know what has been going on with you in terms of child maintenance and the battles that you've been through. And are you through the other side? And do you think it's fair? That's one question. I suppose it would depend on which side you're coming from. But is it fair? Is it treated fairly? Do you think that because I think in the family courts, men are treated disproportionately unfairly. I've always thought that, having looked into many stories about the family courts and the secrecy of the family courts and the way that fathers are often treated by the courts as the enemy of the children as opposed to the father of the children. And so I can't help but imagine, I don't know, you'd have to tell me, is it the same with the CMS? I would have imagined that it would be, but I genuinely don't know. So I'm going to have to leave that up to you to let me know. So give me a call, let me know, 0344 499 1000, and text your message, text the word talk and your message to 87222, and you can of course leave a voice message as well on that same number, 0344 499 1000. Let's go to the calls. And Rebecca has called from London. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello there.
Hello there, Rebecca. It's good to speak to you. Thank you for calling in. Tell me your story.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I do agree that there are many wonderful fathers that are demonized and their children are used as a weapon against them, and they are definitely treated unfairly. And I would say that even goes more towards visitation than finances.
Yeah, the access to the children. Often the mums can move away, can't they, and take the kids with them, or, not let them see the children. Horrendous.
Children suffer, the father suffers, and society suffers. So I will put that out there. However, when it comes to child maintenance, if I talk about my own situation with 2 children, where the father was assessed to pay a certain amount of money immediately because he was a working musician, and let's just say he regularly appeared on Top of the Pops and was in a #1 band for 13 weeks. But what he decided to do was claim he wasn't working and therefore didn't pay. So there are some fathers that can't pay, there are some that don't pay and won't pay. And he has not paid a penny for his children. It's obviously the children are grown up, so he thinks he's absolved of that debt. So I paid his money. He still owes me that money, and he owes over £100,000.
Wow.
But
he was just allowed not to pay. This is what I don't understand. First of all, you'd think he'd want to as the dad, right? Because the money is for the children. He didn't want to do that?
No, he could not bear to hand me any money. When he was given the option to buy the clothes, buy the food, buy the nappies, buy the cot, pay for the activities, he didn't want to do that either.
Oh.
He could not bear, and in fact, the more money he made, the less he wanted to pay. So, and I do feel that the government systems only pursue easy targets. Okay, he was self-employed and all of that, so it's not as straightforward as being able to take something out of somebody's wages. But also, I wasn't on benefit, so they weren't going to get that money back for themselves. So there seems to be no will on the part of the government systems to require fathers to take on their responsibility unless there's something in it for themselves.
I just find that I don't understand that a man would behave like that. And I mean, I know they do, and you're telling me, but it just doesn't seem right. I mean, did he maintain contact with the children?
No.
No, he didn't want anything to do with them.
Later on, actually, as they reached 18, he then wanted a relationship because he thought he was absolved of paying any money. He says, well, you're 18 now, I don't have to pay anything, even though they were in further education and all of that. He thought that his debt was wiped away and therefore now he could have a relationship.
What did the children think of that?
They hate him.
Well, you reap what you sow, don't you? I mean, that they would have seen you go through hell, right?
And it really damaged my daughter because this sort of thing really, because she kept trying to have a relationship and kept trying to, and unfortunately, I had to put it to her, at some point you're going to have to accept he doesn't love you and get on with your life. For my son, he just was disgusted because there was a few things where he broke promises. And I think the thing that stuck in my son's mind was when he said to me, Mum, you don't have any food, you can have some of mine.
Oh.
And I said, I'm not hungry.
I mean, what goes? I mean, this man, and I'm so intrigued to know who he is, but obviously you can't tell me. But it's you know, the fact that he had the audacity to think, oh well, I'll have a relationship with them when they're older.
Yeah, and
having been nothing to do with their lives, having not going to sports days, no,
nothing. There was one time he visited and. I'd actually had 2 bouts of meningitis, so I said, you know, you can take the children to the park. And one was in a pram and one was walking, and I put some toys and things in there. And he turned to me and he said, I'm not going there to play, you know.
Oh, you don't have to know how to pick them, Rebecca.
Well, yeah. You know,
that was a bad day at the office, wasn't it? Crikey.
It really was. And
were you married or were you just a couple?
No, we were not married. And obviously it changed me in other ways, and maybe that gave me the kick up the arse to do some other things. Am I allowed to say arse online?
Oh, you have, so it's fine.
So, you know, so I've done other things and I've enjoyed great things and all the rest of it. But for the children, it has affected them knowing that he wasn't willing to provide food for them.
I mean, I just don't. I mean, I hope that he becomes a really miserable, lonely old man.
Well, yeah, he will reap what he has sowed.
He will. I mean, did he go on and have children with anybody else?
I was just going to come to that, is that, and this is where we fall down in this country, that irresponsible and derelict fathers are then allowed to go and have other children and pay for them without taking care of the prior responsibilities. And not everything is great in America, but you know, at least they do have the system that says you must pay what's due to your first children before you pay any more. And also, if you don't pay, you go to jail.
Yeah, we just don't. There's no robust, real pushback here, is there? If he doesn't want to pay, I was reading some case studies about a guy that just didn't even bother turning up to court, and they couldn't. That was it. That was. I'm sorry, we can't. We can't make him.
Leave it then. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, he still owes that money. I paid his bills. I paid his bills all of those years, and whilst I fed the children, clothed the children, took them to school, put them through their activities and supported them in other ways, there is so much they could have had if he had contributed. And if he paid the amount that he is owed, I could now do something more for my children who can't get all the freeness that everybody else seems to be entitled to, that can't get on the property ladder, that can't do other things. I could support them to do those things now if he paid his bill.
And are you pursuing it? Is there any method for pursuing it?
It is a vehicle to pursue it, unless I have free money in my back pocket to hire lawyers and pursue him through the courts and investigate the way he hides his money, which he does. I mean, even when, like I say, his children sat and watched him on Top of the Pops week after week after week, and somehow the authorities were unable to verify that he was working.
So bonkers.
So, you know, unless I can throw buckets of money on investigations and private detectives and all of that sort of thing, plus the lawyers, plus the court fees.
Is he still well known?
No, I wouldn't say he's that well known. He's been quite self-destructive. Let's put it that way.
Good.
But, yeah.
Good. He deserves what's coming to him. I mean, you know, the fact that his children don't want to know him, I mean, that good for them. I mean, you know, that you've brought them up to be strong and independent and to know what this man really is and was to them. I mean, that's amazing. I was going to say I'm very proud of you. I don't know you, but I am proud of you.
He walks around his community and speaks in his circles about his kids are the most important thing.
Of course he does.
But he doesn't want to feed them. And his legacy is, I honestly think, and I think this is common for girls, I think my daughter's damaged by that experience. Yeah. But my son, in all honesty, hates him. And from his 7th birthday on, he has hated him.
Wow.
And doesn't want to know him.
I mean, that's sad as well, isn't it, really? But, you know...
He's a father himself now, and he's a wonderful father.
Oh, it's brilliant. See, that's all down to you. I mean, at least you can look at the kids and go, that's all, you know, I did that. You know, these wonderful adults that you've got in the world now.
I feel like he could pay his bill, though.
Yeah, of course you would. I want him to pay his bill.
Yeah, and why don't we have a system that...
that you can pursue him? Will the CMS not help you with that at all?
No.
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 So it'd have to be a private prosecution?
Yeah. So that's the fundamental problem that we have here, that it's not written in our laws and regulations that, you know...
It's still a debt, yeah.
Yeah, and fathers must pay, and they must be responsible. And I know you'd mentioned about there may be a discrepancy between who's earning what. However, it actually doesn't matter. You know, we should be both 50% responsible.
I agree. And however that's broken down. You know, if it's broken down by you doing the caring and there's a financial value put on that, which there should be, right? So that's your contribution. If you had to...
Even just the finances, 50-50, if both people can afford their 50%.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if one's earning more than the other. 50% is 50%.
Yeah.
You know, it's different if somebody can't get work. I'm not talking about people that refuse to work, but people that can't get work or become ill or injured or, you know, whatever, then everybody's got hard times. But when both parties can afford to pay their 50%, they should pay. Yeah. And that should remain a debt that can be recovered forever.
I completely agree, and that debt needs to stay on the cards until it's absolutely all paid off. Listen, Rebecca, thank you so much for calling in. I wish you well. I wish there was something I could do to help you. Well, I'm useless at everything, but I would love to be able to help you. But an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, what a scumbag. Sorry. I've got to take a quick break, but I'll be back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. It is Talk Back here with Petrie, and we're talking about the CMS, the Child Maintenance Service, and just child maintenance in the round, really. That story from Rebecca was extraordinary. Got a voice note here from Matt in Norfolk, so let's have a listen.
Talking about the child maintenance system, is it fair? From my experience, no. I just can't believe how they chase people for money all the time. I've never ever missed one single payment, and they chase me. I can really understand how so many fathers are in despair and feel like ending their life because of the child maintenance system. I paid my ex-wife £120,000 and they chase me all the time. If my money goes up, I left my home with absolutely nothing when I split from my wife. I had to rebuild my life. I had to take money out of my pension to just buy essentials like a cooker, a fridge, bits and pieces, and they keep on chasing you for that money that you've spent, even though you walked away with absolutely nothing. So is the child maintenance system fair? No. Thank you for listening.
Oh, Matt, I mean, that is a story that I'm afraid that I've heard on repeat as well. So I think that it does seem that there is, it just doesn't work, does it, as a system? If they're hounding people, the good guys, and letting Rebecca's bloke walk away paying nothing, that's what I don't understand. That is the unfairness in the system, is where, you know, you've got scumbags who just run off and say, no, I'm not going to have anything to do with my kids. And then good guys like Matt who are hounded because they're easy to hound because they pay. That's the system, isn't it? That's the corruptness of the system, it seems. And I've heard too many stories like that to think that it is just an anomaly as well. So thank you for calling in. I've got to take another quick break, but I'll be back with another call in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. It's Talk, and it's Talk Back with me, Petrie, and I'm here until the top of the hour. I just want to read out this before we go to John on the phones. I just want to read this from Baz. He said, I split with my wife of 20 years when my youngest child was 13. I moved out of the family home and moved away, and initially was paying cash, later changed to a bank transfer, so there was a record. But then my wife moved away overnight, taking our 3 kids with her. Then child maintenance chased me for money. Though I lost my home, business and kids all in one go, and I wasn't in a great place mentally. I got back on my feet running a pub when they caught up with me again, taking it straight from my wages, leaving me £90 to live off for the week. Impossible. Again, I lost my job as I couldn't afford to have it. Social services, schools, police and MPs refused to tell me where my kids were. My youngest is now 25 and is back seeing me, but the 2 elder girls aren't. But the CMS say I owe £11,000 and harass me constantly, but refuse to acknowledge if the money I owe is correct, with me being homeless for so long. The system is so loaded in favour of the woman and doesn't take into consideration the full circumstances. I've been very close to a mental breakdown, and my yearly argument with the CMS often opens up very raw emotions. My heart goes out to all the parents alienated from their kids. Stay strong. Thank you, Baz. A very similar story, I would say, to the one we just heard from Matt. John is in Staffordshire. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Petrie. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good. So tell me your story.
I'm not going to use real names, but
no, don't.
I used to work with a guy in the RAF who had a couple of children. I knew his wife previously, and I knew his children, and he was one of the biggest fiddlers ever going on in regards to not paying for his children.
Right, okay.
I knew him, like I say, I worked with him in Germany, and he completely refused 100% to pay for his children, paid no child benefit whatsoever. And
is that because he hated his?
Later on in Staffordshire.
Is that because he hated his wife, his ex-wife? Because that's often the case, isn't it? Oh, I don't want her to have any money, but it's not for her; it's for the children.
Well, yes, exactly. It was for the children, and he refused point blank to pay any money whatsoever for the maintenance and upkeep and welfare of his children, and he got away with it full stop.
No way. I mean, that's really unfair. When you hear, I don't know if you heard the voice message from Matt, you know, a good dad who's paying and gets harassed because he's easy to find, right? And then you've got other people who refuse to pay anything, and nothing happens to them.
Well, he was an exception. He had the best sports car on camp, and he used to flaunt his money. And he was always constantly out socialising, and he got away with it full stop. And he never, ever, ever was brought to account because he was slippery. And
how did he get away with it, though? I mean, the military are usually quite good at making. Was it military? Sorry, I just assumed.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was.
They're usually quite good at making. You know, they're quite tough on soldiers who don't pay. So he must have been very smart to get away with it.
He was exceptionally smart, Petrie. We had a massive fraud inquiry at the camp I was at, Stafford. It was at the time RAF Stafford. Right. And he was the only person in the section he worked in who was never court-martialed. And that's how slippery he was. But
I mean, that is because that is unusual. Because as you know, I knocked around with the military for a while, and I know that and I know that, like you said, the court marshalling system, they were really tough on dads that didn't pay. I think I did a story on it once in Mönchengladbach. You know, that they would get a notification. These soldiers and airmen are very easy to find, obviously, and then they'd be marched into the RSM's office. And shouted at until they sorted themselves out. So how did he lie his way out of that?
I don't know, Petrie. To be quite honest with you, I think the guy must have been coated in Teflon.
Yeah, there's always people like that around, aren't there?
Yeah. But like I say, people get away with it and people don't. And he was one of these people who got away with it. And coming on the show, everybody will know what I'm talking about. But I'm like I say, I'm not going to say his name.
No, please don't. I don't want to get sued. But
not me.
That's what really annoys me. That you've got Baz and Matt and other men that have contacted me through, and it's not always just on the male side but you know, who are obviously doing the right thing and being treated really badly for it and being stressed out for it and trying their best and definitely not getting away with it. And then you've got people like this bloke you're talking about who just skirts through life, just skims through life without any responsibility at all.
Yeah, and fair play to the guys who pay the way. I met plenty of people who used to do that in the armed forces, and they paid the way all the way.
Yeah.
The kids were looked after, but you know, just to say, people get away with it.
Yeah, and that's what's unfair, because if they keep running, the CMS can't be bothered to chase them. That's the real truth of it. And you get the good people who are contactable, who've been in touch, who've done the right thing. They're easier to chase. They're easier to pin down. And once they're in the system, they don't get out of the system. And the best, you know, if you're going to get away with it, you stay out of the system completely forever, and then you never have to go. Then you never get chased. John, thank you for calling in and giving us that story, because it does bring it into perspective. Because we had a couple of good guys, haven't we, talking about how they've done their right thing and they've done the best thing. And there are scumbag dads as well. So we've heard that from Rebecca and also